Yesterday in New York, the United Nations Security Council unanimously backed a ceasefire deal proposed by the Biden administration for Israel and Hamas. Now, Russia abstained from that vote. Well, earlier today, Israeli officials confirmed they are open to the plan, but only if it meets necessary conditions, including the destruction of the military and governing capabilities of Hamas, the freeing of all remaining hostages, and the assurance that Gaza will not represent a future threat to Israel. Has the Biden administration accurately represented this in the agreement, which they say accomplishes these aims? Joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Tim Burchett. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, and the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee as well. He represents the 2nd Congressional District of Tennessee. Congressman Burchett, welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for having me on, brother.
So you serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. What do we know about the UN Security Council and it aligning with Israeli priorities?
Well, anything dealing with the United Nations, I'm suspect of. Tony, as you know, I've not been a really big fan. I've championed the cause of defunding them, getting out of it, because they, time and time again, don't represent our interest, and our interest is in traditional Americans. This bunch running Washington right now is not traditional. I feel like this is not in Israel's best interest. There's 3 layers of this thing. The first layer is release some of the hostages. And the second is more along the same. And the third is all of them come back. The problem you've got is these people that came across the border, they're just murdering savages. They're demonic. I've seen the tapes of them, of what they did. And some of the people they pulled out were dead when they pulled them out. They killed them, and then they buried them out in the desert somewhere just to mess with the Israelis' heads. And some of the kids, we don't know where they are. And then you got to ask yourself, what in the world is the United States doing negotiating with terrorists? Hamas is a terrorist organization, and this thing is just fraught with problems. Again, let Israel handle it. There's a reason Netanyahu does not want American troops on the ground. He saw what happened under the Biden administration. We pulled out of Afghanistan. 13 brave Americans were killed. They could have shot the suicide bomber more than once, but he was ordered to stand down. I asked that question, and it was found out in testimony in the committee through my questioning. So a lot of problems. Again, let Israel handle this. This is not our business. And United Nations is showing just how worthless and wrong they are once again.
Well, also troubling in the resolution at the very end, the last item is, quote, reiterates its unwavering commitment to the vision of a 2-state solution where 2 democratic states, Israel and Palestine, live side by side in peace within secure and recognized borders consistent with international law and relevant UN resolutions. This is essentially giving up the heart of Israel. We've already heard from members of the governing party or the governing coalition in Israel that they won't go along with this. And I can't imagine that they're supportive of this.
No, and clearly this is just pure politics, Tony, as you know. Michigan's in play. It has a huge Middle Eastern population. The president needs Michigan. President Biden does. It's leaning towards Trump right now. Working people up there, union people, they're tired of this garbage. They just want to work for a living. They don't want their money supporting a bunch of men dressed up like women, things like that. So there's a lot more in play here than peace in the Middle East, I can tell you that. And once again, anytime we do anything with the United Nations, it is tainted at best.
Congressman, I want to get your response to this because we're seeing now more and more criticism in the wake of the weekend rescue of 4 Israeli hostages. Quite amazing to me, daytime rescue. But now they're facing a lot of criticism because of the deaths that occurred of so-called civilians in Gaza as a result of rescuing those hostages. But civilians in Gaza were the ones holding the hostages.
Yeah, you even had a member of the media, as it's turned out, was involved in some of this. Yeah, this is not anything that comes out of the media in this country dealing with this is again very suspect. This whole thing is it's unbelievable how fast this country, our learning institutions and our so-called intelligentsia have turned on our ally Israel, and this is another instance of that. These people are terrorists. They had kidnapped innocent civilians. Some of them are American citizens, as you know, and yet we want to play footsie with them, and we want to, go out with our hands out and our checkbook out. Which, by the way, the third part of that of those negotiations, they're going to rebuild Gaza, and I think
right.
you know which taxpayers are going to do that.
Very good point, Tim, because that's actually not stated in here, but it is specifically listed in here. So we're rewarding these terrorists who come across on October the 7th and brutally murder over 1,200 Israelis, take almost 250 back to their country, and many of them have been tortured for months. And we're going to reward them by rebuilding the city that they left, that they ended up, their actions led to it being destroyed. And by the way, we're going to throw in a little extra. We're going to give you a whole state to govern by yourself.
Yeah, well, I think we ought to listen to what Netanyahu says. We're not going to do anything till we destroy the military wing of Hamas and their leadership, because that needs to be at the top of the list, because you're going to continue. Remember, this is the group that they brought in. The people in Gaza brought this group in. This is not. This is their doing. And so, yeah, these people are terrorists, and they need to be treated as such. And any negotiation with them is bad. The horrible thing is the innocent civilians, the uneducated folks fall into this trap. You know that, and I know that. They're the ones that's always going to get obliterated. When Daddy was in the Pacific in the Second World War on Okinawa, he went back for the 50th anniversary of Peleliu. He wouldn't go back for the 50th anniversary of Okinawa because of all the civilians that got killed and were mistreated by the Japanese. So, this is what happens. It's unfortunate. We need to let Israel go in there and end this as fast as possible. That's going to save the most lives. And if the UN wants to end this thing, tell Hamas to release all the hostages.
Right. Hold Hamas accountable, not Israel. It's Hamas that's responsible for this. Final question for you, Congressman Tim Burchett. We've been tracking. I know the House Rules Committee is in recess at the moment. They've been debating the contempt of Congress charges against Attorney General Merrick Garland. What can you tell us? Well,
Merrick Garland obviously is hiding something. They released the written transcripts of it, just not the audio of it. And now we're being told that there's things that were left out. So, we've got a Justice Department that's scared against America. They are weaponized, and this is the tip of that spear. And I think we need to get to the bottom of it. Let's get them in there. Let's get them under oath. And granted, now the Republicans, they're probably not going to be enough of them to have enough guts to hold him in contempt, but dadgum, we ought to put it up there and let people know how their representatives voted.
So that vote, if it clears Rules Committee this evening, will be on the House floor tomorrow, supposedly. Do you think the votes will be there?
I think it's going to be really close. I do. I just don't have a lot of faith in some of my colleagues, and that's unfortunate. But I'm hoping that I'm one of those guys that optimistically swings for the fence every time. So I'm hoping that it does. I'm praying that.
Well, we're going to be watching very, very closely. Congressman Tim Burchett, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today, my friend.
Thank you, Tony. And please ask folks to vote and to pray for your country.
Absolutely. Pray, vote, stand. That's always a good encouragement.